What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Next Deal podcast. As always, I'm your host, Justin Dossie, joined by my beautiful co-host with a hat today, Vince Hall. Vince, how's it going? I know. My head's too big to wear hats, so it's just one of those things, unfortunately.
My head's too small to wear them, apparently, and it takes me a long time to find one that I feel confident in. And Susie likes this one, so if she likes it, I'm going to wear it.
Yeah, I was always the kid that was like holding on to that last button on the back of the hat that that like we're barely staying on. And yeah, I don't know. Our family has giant heads for some reason, but
what an intro this morning.
I know, right? Anyway, today we're joined by Alex Pardo. Alex Pardo is a commercial real estate investor. Over the years, you've been in real estate for about 19 years. Is that right, Alex?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. 19 years, anywhere between 700 and 800 deals. A lot more experience than I have in real estate at this point. And super excited to talk with you because we've only had like some small commercial conversations on this podcast so far. It hasn't been a full podcast where someone specializes in it. It's someone who's just kind of gotten into it or they've done one or two deals. So very, very curious to learn a little bit more about this. So to just kind of get started, quick intro to yourself. I know I gave a little bit there, but we usually start with how you got started in real estate, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, a couple things. Honored to be on the podcast, guys. You guys are putting out great content out there, and I just had an opportunity, Justin, to spend some time with your brother last week in Oregon. So just really looking forward to being on the show. Second of all, that has to be the greatest start to a podcast ever. You guys going back and forth in the size of your head and hats. But no, so in all seriousness, I came from humble beginnings. I don't have a rags to riches story, but I also I wasn't born and raised with a silver spoon in my mouth. I'm the first entrepreneur in my family. And I'll give you the short version of the story. But, for me, I think I got an itch of the concept of buying low and selling high when I was an 11-year-old boy playing baseball, growing up in the park. I'd buy baseball card packs for 50 cents at that time, and I'd essentially flip them for $1. And I didn't know I was doing that. So I really liked the idea of that. And then something happened when I got to college. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I think it was more of like an ego thing that I thought it would be cool and prestigious to like one day be a CEO or a CFO of a big company. So I started interviewing with big companies like Johnson & Johnson and ended up taking a job with General Electric in their financial management program. And I'm not good at a lot of things, but like one of the things I think I'm pretty decent at is getting clarity and then reverse engineering my way to what it is that I want. And for me, guys, it was like 3 months into that job, I had that defining moment where I looked at my boss and then all the way up the ladder. And I'm like, I do not want that person's life. I don't want that person's job. They basically felt to me and looked like a corporate slave, right? Like that's what it came off. And for me, I was like, I made a commitment, so I'm going to finish this. And I had the opportunity to travel around with the company. So that was pretty cool. But when I left GE, I decided to go backpacking around Europe because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. But I knew I wanted to start my own business. I just didn't know what that was going to be. And when I was traveling from country to country on the Eurorail, on trains, that's when I started to immerse myself in a lot of the classic books that I'm sure some of your guests have mentioned, like the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad might be one of them.
Oh man, so boring and unoriginal, right? But like, it's the truth. It's just part of my story. Like, I'd love to say there was this like secret ninja book that like unlocked everything for me, but I got started with the classics. And when I got back to Miami, I moved in with my parents at 25 years old. So I don't know about you guys, but not a good look. Not the way I drew it up. And so I had a lot of motivation to A, not live with my parents at 25. B, I didn't want to go get a job. I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I know what I didn't want. And I think that's a takeaway for people listening is that if you have a hard time figuring out what you want in life or in business, ask yourself what you don't want. Sometimes that's easier to answer. But yeah, I went to a marketing for deals boot camp. And when I got home, I plucked out a pre-foreclosure letter. And I went to Kinko's. I photocopied about 300 of those bad boys. And I sent out my first pre-foreclosure campaign. Fast forward 2.5-ish months. A lot of failure, a lot of like trying to figure things out. I did my first deal. I was too afraid to do it on my own. So I brought in a friend and we ended up splitting $44,000.
Not a bad first deal.
That's how I got. Now, granted, that's not the norm, right? I don't want people to think like my next 3, 4, second, third, fourth, fifth deal were like under 10 grand, but the first one was a good one.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think my first deal was like 12. 11, somewhere around there. So that's not bad for a first deal. I like it.
Yeah.
Mine was 47.
Man,
well,
you got me beat.
Just
That's amazing. I love it. I love it.
That's awesome.
Again,
cool.
probably not going to happen again anytime soon, but maybe it will.
Yeah. No, but for me, it wasn't so much about the money I made. It was proof of concept. It was just, I've always been a ready, fire, aim type of dude. And I had so much pain associated with, again, staying at my parents' house and the thought of going to get a job that, like, when I went into real estate, I wasn't worried about having all the answers. I'm just like, I'm going to figure this out, because in my mind, like, I had no other option. And I think that mindset served me really well, because I fumbled my way through, like, I did everything you're not supposed to do in a deal. And I still was able to get that first deal done with a little bit of guidance. And so that's hopefully inspiration and encouragement for people listening that are kind of sitting on the sidelines, that have been wanting to get into real estate. You know, don't wait for the stars to align, like, figure it out. Like, and today, as you guys know, because of your podcast and several others, there's so much free, valuable content out there. But sometimes it's that almost, it's a double-edged sword, because people get stuck in what feels comfortable. And for me, like, I got started direct mail and door knocking. I was outside of my comfort zone. I remember walking up to doors, knocking and hoping and praying they wouldn't answer. And then after like the 10th or 11th door knock, like, I just started getting a little bit more comfortable, and I just kind of like failed forward, as they would say.
Yeah, I remember doing that cold calling where I was like, please don't answer, please don't answer, please don't answer. Yeah, man. It's like, I just don't, I'm doing the work, but I really don't, I'm not comfortable doing all the work just yet.
Just staring at your computer like there's a long list here.
Yeah.
But you know what, guys? I mean, and I'm sure you can attest to this, but those are signs of growth, right? Like, they say that when you feel that discomfort, or when you're outside of like your zone, like, that's where the growth happens. And I really just tried to like lean into that. I tried to embrace that suck. And then I had a mindset shift that, like, hey, if I'm walking to a door, if I'm calling someone or speaking to an owner, and I'm putting off that energy, I'm not going to get the ultimate result I want. So I really had to like shift my mindset and just change my energy about like just being positive about it, and saying, hey, whether I'm able to help this person or not, like, there's a learning lesson here for me.
Yeah.
100%.
I started doing something where I'm looking more into vacant properties and skip tracing the family tree and the relationship tree and everything.
Smart.
And calling these people, and totally out of my comfort zone. Like, getting on the phone and be like, this is kind of a weird conversation, but are you related to so-and-so? But I actually did get an appointment out of one of them. So, nice. Doing that. But yeah, it's like, it's once you keep doing it after a while, you kind of get a rhythm, and you kind of, get a feel for what to say and how to say it and things like that. But, usually I come across as a pretty nice guy. So people are usually willing to talk to me, and thankfully, not too many people have cussed me out. So, but yeah, that's a prime example. Just get out of your zone and do something different, and, fruit will come from it for sure.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I'm curious, Alex, wanted to run back for a quick second, where you talked about like some of the mistakes you made at the beginning, right? Those first
I made a ton.
2.5 months or so when you were trying to get this going. What are some of those mistakes that you were making, and how did you work your way through those? Right. Like, because a lot of the times we'll like not cover some of those in-depth details on there. So I am curious, kind of like, what was your experience with some of those failures at the beginning when you're getting started?
I appreciate it. Well, I didn't make mistakes for 2.5. I mean, going on almost 20 years, I'm still making mistakes. So let me just call a spade a spade. I mean, I certainly don't want to come on here like as an expert, like I have everything figured out, because I don't. I've been able to do a lot of deals throughout the years just because I continue to put myself out there and learn and grow. But yeah, look, I remember early on, I adopted the mentality of act as if. And this might be controversial, and you guys might even disagree, and that's fair if you do. But like, there's a school of thought that says act as if, right? Like, pretend you're somebody you're not. Put yourself where you want to be. And I do see the merit and value to an extent, but it felt inauthentic. So I remember when I first started communicating with homeowners, I tried to like puff out my chest as if I was like this big company with all this experience. And even though I was able to get that first deal, it just didn't like resonate with me and who I was. And then when I had a shift that I'm just like, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to communicate confidence, But if they ask me a question and I don't have the answer, I'm not going to BS my way through it. I'm going to tell them it's a great question and I don't know, but I'll be resourceful and get them the answer that same day. Right. And so like that was one of the mistakes I made, is trying to pretend I was someone or something I wasn't. So for anybody listening, if you're doing that, my encouragement would be to stop. I think if you can be your authentic, true self, man, it feels so much better. It just I don't know, I was able to connect with people more when I just put the guard down, right? And I was just a person. I remember when I'd go to these houses, I was like in slacks and a button shirt, and like I don't really dress like that unless I'm going to like a formal, right? And I was like, finally, months into this, I was sweating. It was uncomfortable. The Miami heat is brutal when you go door knocking. And I said,
sure.
I'm just going to be myself, man. I'm just going to like wear jeans. I'll wear a polo or a nice t-shirt, and I'll just tell them who I am. And so I think that's one of the first things that I would do. The other mistake I made, which is a huge one, is for the first 2 years that I was in business, guys, I always viewed coaches and mentors as an expense. I remember when I first learned what the local mentor through our real estate investors association was charging. I think it was $5,000 and a deal split. I was like, that's nuts. Like, why would I pay $5,000 for that? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around paying that much money to somebody. And then in 2007, I because I was so smart and I was a genius, I decided to get involved in my first luxury flip. And between myself and a partner, we lost $102,000.
Yep.
So I lost 51 grand 2 years into my journey. Thank God it didn't put me under, but it could have. Yeah. And I always say, of all the deals I've done, storage, single family, whatever, that was my best deal because that was the trigger to go find a coach. And ever since 2008, I've had a coach in one way, shape, or form. So
yep. Yeah, I can't agree more. Ever since I started, I'm 7 years in on the entrepreneurial journey and have had a coach the entire time. I think with the exception of like a 6-month gap where I was trying to find somebody. I had somebody that like moved on to a different company for his own personal growth and things like that, and trying to find somebody in there. And like those 6 months, I was like, man, I really miss having somebody to talk to about all the shit that's going on in my head right now.
Yeah, dude.
And, the ideas and not knowing where to go. And, even just to bounce those ideas off of somebody else, is worth every penny.
Yeah. Penny. To me, it's like the ultimate insurance policy, right? Like the fact that I can grab my phone and just call any number of people that I've built a meaningful relationship with over the course of years through masterminds or people I've invested in, people that have invested in me, coaches, mentors. I mean, it's invaluable. I don't know why anybody would try to do this business or any business on their own, right? Because as cliche as it sounds, like business is a team sport. And it doesn't mean you have to go have a big team, but you got to have people that you can confide in, trust in, people that can pour into you because, again, we just don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point. So you don't know what you don't know. Like the coach I work with now, I had always had most of the coaches I'd worked with previously were like 100% business, and which was great. Like I learned a ton on that, but I always felt like I was like, I've got business stuff going on, but I'm like, I'm not super happy right now. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm missing here. And it was one of those where like I found the right person and who asked the right questions, where it was one of those things where it was like, I didn't know what I was missing. And I was like, because in my mind at that point, I was like, I could either do business or I could be happy. Can't do both. Yeah. Doesn't work that way. And realizing like, oh no, you can actually integrate both of those and have an enjoyable life and enjoy the journey and the process while you're going through it. And it was finding that right person who was like able to pull those questions out of me that I was like, oh, I didn't even know that's what I was looking for.
That's how I know you had a great coach, because a really good coach asks the right questions and pulls out from within us the answers that we might not even know we have, but they're inside of us, right? And that's what a really good coach does.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. That's awesome. Well, cool. Let's talk a little bit about, because you started with wholesaling, right? And moved on to commercial real estate at that point. So what was kind of your journey from, I know we've got the first, the starting point of getting started, getting some deals going, but I've seen a couple people make that transition from single family wholesaling, flipping to the commercial real estate space. So kind of talk us through like how that process happened and why you made those decisions along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'll fast forward to 2018. My wife and I were on a cruise, and at that point I had built a team. I think we were a team of 7, and I had the typical lead manager and acquisition manager, dispo, transaction coordinator, like that typical wholesaling model setup. I had an office at that point, and we were working on a handful of deals at the time, and it just felt everything was falling apart. Like deals were falling apart, issues were happening. They were coming to me. I was doing a terrible job as a leader. I wasn't empowering them to, be solutions oriented, which ironically was one of our core values at the time. And I remember being on this cruise and being like, if present is here, I was the complete opposite of present. Right. And I told my wife, I said, I feel like I've built, like the walls of my business feel like a prison and I don't have the keys. Right. I felt literally like a hamster. Like I was just going from deal to deal to deal. And don't get me wrong, while I've been able to generate a lot of money throughout the years and I had built a pretty nice life for myself and my family. One of the you asked me about mistakes. Another mistake I made was I wasn't taking that earned income and putting it into cash flow producing assets. I was literally just a wholesaler, right? I was just wholesaling, and I wasn't being smart and intentional with the money I was making. So in 2018, I thought that my path to wealth was going to be building a rental portfolio. So I immediately told my wife, again, being the ready, fire, aim type of guy, I said, I'm going to start buying rentals in the Midwest. So I started buying rentals in Cleveland, Ohio. A friend of mine that I met at a pretty high level mastermind was in that market. He had a big portfolio. And so I started buying rentals. And a year into that journey, I realized, guys, this ain't passive, right? Nothing passive about single family rentals. Even though I had a management company, like one work order, a furnace, for example, would wipe out my measly $250, $300 cash flow for the year.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't think this is going to be for me. Right. And I don't know that I want 100 doors and 100 tax bills and utilities and all that stuff. It just didn't resonate
trying
with
to
me.
track all of that. And
yeah. It just, even though you can build wealth through single family rentals, I'm not saying you can, it just wasn't the path for me. And brother, in 2019, I remember feeling I was like that burnout. Like I'm burned out with this business. I had overhead of about 45 grand a month. So I had to close a couple of deals just to break even, just to take care of my team. And in 2019, I mentally checked out and I said, okay, I'm going to shut this down. I just didn't have a date. And then COVID came, March of 2020. And it was such a blessing in disguise. I felt a reason now that I could just accelerate this process. And so over the course of 3 months, by June of 2020, I had completely unwound a team of 9 people and shut down a profitable wholesaling business. Because I asked myself one key question. I said, if I'm still doing this business 12 months from today, no matter how much money we're making, how do I feel? And back to your point, Justin, I wasn't happy. I almost felt as bad as like I did on a Sunday evening when I was getting ready to go to my corporate job the next morning. And I'm like,
that dread where you're like, I don't want to do this.
Man. But it was even worse than that because it was my choosing. Like I had built that business that I didn't want to go to. And so, I shut it down despite at the time going through like some identity crisis, right? I've been hosting a podcast called the Flip Empire Show for 8 years now. And at the time I was thinking to myself, like I was creating these stories in my head about like, people would think I'm a failure. How would I look? Why am I shutting down this business? Can I not make it because of COVID? Like all this BS entered my mind. And I realized that like, first of all, I was making myself out to be more important than I really was. Like nobody's looking at me or cares about me. Like that's the truth of the matter. Right. And these were stories I was making up. And I said, real estate is just what I do. It doesn't define who I am as a man, as a father, as a husband. And so I said, screw it. Like this isn't for me. I'm going to shut this down. And my coach at the time told me, don't feel the need to go conquer the next mountain. Take some time off, get clarity, look at your personal vision, right? And that's one thing I would encourage people to do is have a written vision for your life and then go about designing and tweaking the business that's going to enhance your personal vision. So I looked at my vision.
Right here.
Oh, dude, I love it. Amazing.
Yep.
So it's so important. It's like the North Star, because imagine not having a vision, going out and building this business, and then realizing that this business feels like a trap, like a hamster wheel, and it doesn't enhance your life's vision. It detracts from it. So I looked at my vision. I got clear about what I wanted, and I automatically assumed I was going to transition into multifamily, right? Economies of scale, more doors, it just made more sense. And then I started to I was coaching somebody within the mastermind that I ran at the time who owned a few storage facilities. And I got an inside look into that business. And I was like, wait a second, you have, not only do you have cash flow and you have the ability to build wealth, but you're not dealing with tenants, you're not dealing with toilets, and you have time freedom, which is ultimately what I wanted. I think at the end of the day, if you strip it down, what most people listening to this or watching this podcast, I think we just want the ability to have options and time. It's not so much about the money, but the money is the tool to give us the time to do the things that light us up.
Yep.
And so I started researching the asset class, and I came across a lot of interesting facts that I love about it. One of which was it's considered the most recession resistant of all the commercial asset classes. You know, it does well in a great market. It does well in a down market. And then I started researching that. I don't know about you guys, but my wife is like, I have Amazon packages at my door, what feels like on a daily basis. People are always buying stuff. And they need a place to store it.
By
right?
habit now, by habit, when I pull out of my driveway, I back up a little bit further to see if there's anything on our porch because I'm like, there's got to be something there.
Yeah, man, for sure. So you guys can relate. But yeah, I started really researching the asset class in December of 2020. I mentally burned the ships. I said, I'm transitioning into storage. And fast forward 9 months, I closed on my first storage facility, 43,000 square foot facility in Mississippi that cash flowed from day one and had the equity upside. So we could talk about that, but today that facility is under contract. I ended up buying that facility for 1.592 million, and we have it under contract for just under 2.5.
Nice.
So
that's awesome. And
so that was kind of my journey into storage and why I decided to shut down the wholesaling business.
Okay, that's awesome. So with that specific unit, you're what, 4 years in on it? 3-4 years?
I closed September of 21. So yeah, it's going to be 3 years in September.
3 years. Nice. Yeah, that's not bad. Not a bad ROI for 3 years of having it. Did you do like upgrades and stuff to it too?
All we did was we added an automated gate. Like, well, that's one of the things that really appeals to me about storage that I'd love to share with the audience is that we run what's called an unmanned facility, which means that when you think of traditional storage, you think of like walking into an office, talking to somebody behind the counter, you get the keys, you get the lock. Our facilities have offices, but they're vacant. They're shut down. Like, so 80% of this business is pretty much run remotely and automated. So if a tenant, for example, doesn't pay their rent, their gate code gets shut out and they can't access their stuff, right? I don't have any employees. I have 3 facilities, so it's a total of 838 units right now. I'm under contract on another one, and I don't have any employees. I don't have the crazy overhead. And again, I'm not dealing with tenants and toilets. So so the automation, like if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, it would look very different because the technology wasn't there. Right. Today, technology has really allowed the storage business to thrive and grow throughout the years.
Yeah. I've talked to a couple people too that have storage units where they've even got like almost like vending kiosks there too for like locks and packing tape and, you know, all the little things that you might need. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about commercial, guys, is that as you know, in single family, like how do we value a property? Well, it's based on the comparables within, you know, typically a half-mile radius, right? And one of the things I learned about commercial is that it's not based on comps. It's based on the NOI, which is the net operating income. In layman's terms, it just means the value of a commercial property is based on the income that asset produces. So if we're able to increase the NOI, the income, that has a dramatic exponential effect on the value of the facility. So something as simple as like introducing lock fees, right? Like you might say, okay, well, a lock fee costs $20, for example, or an auction fee or a late fee. Those little fees, while they don't sound like much, when you compound them month over month, it has a multiple effect on the value of a facility. And then that's where you have the benefits of both worlds. You can generate cash flow, you can build wealth, and it can be primarily run by other people. So I'm not in the day-to-day operations. If I told you guys I spend, I don't know, maybe a couple of hours a week on my 3 property portfolio, it's probably a lot. Most of the time and energy and effort is found in looking for the opportunity, identifying the opportunity, and then going through the closing process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you try to keep occupancy at as far as like
Yeah, great question. Because occupancy is the challenge these days for most, not for all, but for many storage operators. Like buying occupancy is like what everybody's focused on. I like to keep occupancy between 85 and 88%. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, why don't you want 100% occupied? Why don't you want 95% occupancy? Generally speaking, when I talk to a storage owner and occupancy is so high, that's a strong indication that they're just not charging enough. Right. Like, so you always want to have that buffer of pushing what's called the average of the market street rates and putting upward pressure on the market. Like that's where we really generate a lot of our revenue is obviously through the rent. And so, yeah, ideally 85 to 88, maybe 90% occupancy is kind of like the sweet spot.
Yeah. Have you ever considered like developing a storage unit rather than going out and buying one?
I have, but one thing I can tell you that I suck at is construction and managing contractors and a whole crew. Like that's not in my vision. Like that doesn't appeal to me. But the bigger reason, Vince, it's a really good question. The bigger reason is it's usually a 24 to 36 month play, right? And then once you get that facility like up and running, then you have a ramp up period to fill it up. Yeah. So you're anywhere between at best a year and a half to at worst 3 to 4 years. And it can be very profitable. Don't get me wrong. But I've decided that for me, my path is going to be mom and pop operated facilities in small markets that have a population of anywhere between 1,000 people on the low end, all the way up to 60, 70,000 people in that market. Yeah. I think the statistic is there's over 51,000 storage facilities in the United States, and 63% of them are run and owned by mom and pop operators, right? Like the other ones are run and owned by the big REITs, the Public Storages of the world, Extra Space. Yeah. Those are not the types of facilities that we're going after.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I have all the questions. Some of the questions are, A&E storage wars. But
that always comes up, man. You know what's so funny? So our auctions are online. So I've actually never, even though I've been in the business, whatever it's been 3.5, 4 years, I've actually never seen an auction done in front of like a storage facility. Like everything is done online. Our boots on the ground. When a customer doesn't pay, we don't have to wait 3 to 6 months to evict them. In storage, we have something called lien laws. So depending on where the facility is located and what state or county, typically speaking, anywhere between 37 days and 70 days, somewhere in that range, we just post a picture of their contents. We put an advertisement in the paper, and our third-party management company handles all that. And generally speaking, within a couple of months, we can just auction off their stuff, generate a little bit of income on that, and then make the unit available to rent again. But yeah, I've never been to an auction, and people always ask me, like, what's the coolest thing you've ever like been able to acquire from a customer? Nothing. I've never acquired anything. That's not why I'm in it for. So yeah.
I have a friend of mine that lives in Monroe County, Illinois, which is just outside of St. Louis, and he owns multiple thrift stores. And all he does to fill the thrift stores usually are auctions at storage facilities, and also estate sales and things like that. He makes multiple 6 figures a year by doing that.
I believe it. Yeah. In fact, I think in Storage Wars, like the couple, they always end up going to thrift stores and then selling off their stuff.
Yep. Man, I haven't watched that show in forever. I forgot about that one.
Last time I watched it was on the airplane.
How are you? So this is something that running a direct mail marketing company like we do, we get this question a lot, is how are you sourcing these deals, right? Are you going listed properties, or are you going direct to seller? What does that look like for you?
Great question. So those are the two options, right? You can go listed. So if you're gonna target listed, there's the commercial MLS, so to speak, is like Crexy.com, LoopNet.com. That's where you can go and look for commercially listed properties, and there's a section in there called self-storage. I have chosen to go, because of my background of direct to seller, I've chosen to go off market. So I've been involved in 6 storage deals now, and 3 of them have been through direct mail. So you guys will be happy to hear that. Love direct mail. So we can definitely talk about that. And then relationships and cold calling are the other 2 lead generation strategies per se, right? One of the things that I've always said about marketing, and I think you guys would agree, but feel free to push back if you have a different thought, is most marketing works. The question is, do you work? Are you going to be like consistent with it? I see,
100%.
dude, I see so many
100%.
people. I see so many people launch a campaign, whether it's direct mail or texting or cold calling, and then they do it once, maybe twice, and they stop. It's like, well, you're not going to get results like that. You might get lucky, but that's not what's going to be sustaining for you. So like direct mail for us in single family, we used to send out at one point between 35 and 40,000 postcards a month. Storage is nowhere like that. We're dealing with a much smaller sample size, but direct mail, in fact, in September, guys, you guys will appreciate the story. I closed on a deal in September, but in June, I got a call from a lady that said, Alex, you sent me a letter 2 years ago, and I kept it because it felt very personal. And she said, at the time, I wasn't ready to sell, but today I am. Are you still interested? Well, super long story short, I ended up closing on that facility and I ended up wholesaling it. So I put it under contract for 400. And because of timing, I felt like it wasn't the right time to just take on another facility. I ended up selling it for 550. So I made a nice 150K pop on a storage deal. But I asked her when we were leading up to closing, I said, why did you call me? I'm sure you've gotten other pieces of mail. By the way, as an aside, storage owners don't get nearly the amount of mail that single family homeowners get. Like not even a fraction. So when we talk about competition, it's not even close. Single family is much more competitive is what I'm saying. But I asked her, I said, what was it about the letter? And she said, well, first thing was you put a picture of your family. You have a beautiful family. And then she kind of went on about that. And she said, it felt like you were speaking to me. Right. Like, and when I got started, rewind 19 years ago, I would have made myself out to be like some corporate logo and some big company.
Yep.
And people want to deal with people they can relate to.
Yep.
So, but back to your original question, direct mail, relationships, and cold calling has been responsible for my deals.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that about the marketing, because that is the number one challenge we face as a marketing company is getting people to understand that. Like it doesn't matter what marketing you do, like outside of maybe text messaging now, because that's pretty challenging to make work at this point. But like cold calling, PPC, direct mail, Facebook ads, YouTube, whatever, like if you stick with it long enough and understand it and master it, it will work for you. And if you're consistent with it, where it's like the problem we've always had at Ballpoint is people will come in, do 1,000 pieces of mail, and it's one time. They're like, well, I didn't get a deal. Like, well, you only did 1,000 pieces of mail. That's why. Like this process, for example, we're sending 10 to 15,000 pieces of mail per month to get the deal flow that we're looking for. And we're consistent with it every month, even if one month we don't get the deals that we're looking for, because we know that compounding effect will be there. So such an important thing. And to your point on the competition side of it is there's not much there from a direct mail standpoint at all. Right. And I think part of that too is people struggle finding good data for self-storage. So I don't know if this is something you want to give away, but are you willing to talk about where you get your data from when you are sending mail?
I'm an open book. So a couple different.
I want to know.
Absolutely. So I've tested out a couple different channels as far as like quote unquote buying list. And I can tell you what I've defaulted to. That's my favorite. But there's a company out there called dataaxle.com, which used to be infousa.com. And you basically, it's the easy button per se. Like you call them and you give them your criteria. So in my case, my criteria is I'm looking for storage facilities that are in towns that have population between 1,000 and 60,000 people. I want the population to be increasing over time. I don't want to be in a market where the population is decreasing.
Everybody's moving. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is a big one is I want an average medium household income of at least $50,000. I don't want to be in a market. My very first facility is in a challenging market in Mississippi where the average income is under 30 grand. And I can tell you, if you buy a facility in a market like that, you're going to have more collections issues, more bad debt, just more issues, right? And that's not why I got into storage. So those are some criteria. And then you make sure that you tell them exclude big companies like Public Storage, CubeSmart, Extra Space, exclude those players. I just want mom and pop operated facilities. And then the last criteria I give them is I'm looking for at least 10,000 net rentable square feet and up. I don't want to be buying a 4,000 square foot facility because quite honestly,
not mini storages.
Yeah, I mean, there's big, like, in fact, my 43,000 square foot facility, they call themselves mini storage.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, never
so
mind.
I wouldn't exclude mini storage, but the juice is just not worth the squeeze on a tiny facility with like 30 doors, as an example. So Data Axle, obviously you buy the list and then they'll send you a CSV file. I have never had a good results with buying from Data Axle. Having said that, I know people that have. So it's probably on me that I just didn't mail it enough. I think I want to say I did 4 mailing campaigns to that list, and I just got a lot of bad data. So I ended up saying, hey, I'm just going to curate and build the list from the ground up. As an aside, PropStream, I believe now you can pull a storage list from PropStream. I haven't tested it yet, but I wanted to put that out there in case there's any PropStream users. But I have built the list organically. So Google Maps is your best friend. So one thing I do is once I pick a city where I want to start to look for storage, I go to Google Maps, I put in the city and state, and then there's a little there's a circular button that says nearby. Click on nearby and type in self-storage. What that's going to do, guys, is that's going to bring up all of the storage facilities that Google recognizes that has a Google My Business listing in that market. Now, here's the list that I like to start building that I teach my clients is look for facilities that do not have a website. So on there, you'll see the facilities that have the circle that say website. If it doesn't have that, that means they don't have a website. That is a dead giveaway that it's a mom and pop operator that is not treating it like a business. More than 75% of our rentals come from SEO and PPC, which means you need a website.
Yeah.
So if you have a storage facility and you don't have a website and you're just relying on foot traffic, you're stuck in 30 years ago and it's just, you're not optimizing, you're not being efficient. So I start building a list.
Back rents and all that stuff, I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. So through a VA, I build a list of facilities that don't have a website in certain markets. And I also look for facilities that have no Google reviews, poor Google reviews, or little Google reviews. Google reviews is so important in the storage business. A lot of our tenants look at Google reviews. So if you come across a facility that has 3.5 stars, they have 3 reviews, dead giveaway again. They're not really treating it like a business. And then the other tip that I'll give people is if they do have a website, go to the website. Does it look like it was built 20 years ago? When you go to the contact page, does it have an at Yahoo email, at Hotmail? Like
Hotmail, yep.
Another giveaway that it's a mom and pop operator. Just simply pick up the phone and call. Like that's the cool thing. A lot of these mom and pop operators, some of them have property managers and on-site managers, but I'd probably say 40, 50% of the time that I call, I'm speaking directly to the owner. And the conversation, guys, is so much different from a storage owner to a quote unquote motivated seller. They're not emotionally attached to the facility. They're a business owner, even though they might not be, super efficient. So the conversation is just easier. Like I don't know. Sometimes with motivated sellers, it can feel like a tug of war, and it doesn't have to be that way. With storage owners, I find, generally speaking, much easier conversation.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I love that. I was taking notes too. I was typing.
Cool.
And then I realized I was like, I'm recording this. I could just go back and listen to it later.
Yeah, no, look, quite honestly, man, I'd love to give you some like sexy list, some sexy data source. If it's out there, I don't know it. I've tried to keep things simple. And back to one of your original questions, Justin, is like a mistake I made when I was building the wholesaling business is like I had all the bells and whistles. The CRM did all this ninja crazy stuff, and I would get bogged down in the CRM. And when I transitioned into storage, I said, you know what? I'm just going to keep this thing simple. Yes, I have a simple CRM, but nothing crazy. Like I've just tried to keep it simple. With storage, I'm not looking for 5 to 10 deals a month like I was with wholesaling. I'm looking for 1 to 3 really, really solid deals a year.
Yeah.
I like this approach that you have right here too. With going to Google Maps and looking for storage facilities and, looking for the website. Do they have one? The Google reviews. It's almost similar to like driving for dollars on the single family, right? So you're going out there, you're trying to find properties that most likely other people have not even sent mail to because it's not coming up on a list, right? So I'm kind of like seeing it that way, and I really love that approach. And
100%.
Yeah.
Let me give you guys another quick tip for people listening. Go to Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
And you're not gonna now in Facebook Marketplace, I've never come across a storage facility for sale, but what I come across all the time are storage owners marketing units for rent. Send them a message and ask them, hey, have you ever considered selling, or would you be open to an offer? Right? Like just a simple message. You're going to get a lot of no's, but every now and then you get, well, yeah, I have been considering. What do you have in mind? And now it just opens up a conversation. And that's something people can do while they're watching Netflix and chilling. Just literally like just go to Facebook Marketplace and just copy paste and send messages. Just easy, free way to get in front of storage owners.
Well, I like the way you're doing that too, because it's the thing I've always told people from a single family and small multifamily side is doing the stuff that other people won't do is going to get you better results, right? 100%. Like everybody, like in our space on the single family, multifamily side, like everyone will go to PropStream or ListSource, and that's great. But everyone will pull absentee with equity, which I'm not knocking because we still do deals on that. But there's a difference between sending 5,000 absentee with equity and getting 1 or 2 deals, sending 5,000 of pre-foreclosures, tax liens over $1,000, intrafamily transfers, expired MLS listings, and getting 3 or 4 deals out of it because you have better data instead of just that massive list that everybody's pulling. And it's not a ton more work really to do that. And like even what you're saying, like you have a VA do this, you said, right? Like,
yeah, correct. You can have a VA do it.
Doesn't take a ton of time, and it's not that expensive.
Yeah. The other thing, guys, that I think people might appreciate is Fiverr. Go to Fiverr, Fiverr.com, and hire a data scraper and basically say, hey, here's my criteria. I want a list of storage facilities, blah, blah, blah. Like give them the list, let them do their tech ninja stuff and provide you a list. That's under $100. You can have a list of hundreds of storage facilities in any given market.
I like it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, that's all stuff that most people don't do or don't think that way, right?
Yeah. Man, I love this is storage for me, guys, and real estate in general. And this might shock you. Like, I'm not passionate about real estate. It's a vehicle. I like it. I'm pretty decent at it. But like doing this, interacting with you guys, sharing, giving, like I'm an open book because there's no secrets. Right? Like everything's out there. The question is anybody listening going to like do something with the information? Like that's ultimately what you guys as podcast hosts, me as a guest, me when I host like I just want people to take action with the information and go improve their life, their family's lives. It has this ripple effect, right? So to me, storage is just a great vehicle to have time freedom and to not have to just be a hamster on a wheel, constantly chasing deals. But it goes back to your vision. Maybe your vision is to grow this big, massive company and have a huge team. Great, go do that, right? Maybe it's not. So just having clarity, having a vision, and then figuring out like, does storage fit in my vision? For many investors listening, this could be a relatively simple add-on or bolt-on to their business because marketing is marketing. Like a lot of the skills I've developed as a single family investor have easily transferred over to storage. So
No, I love that.
Got a quick question. Alex, you love this side of the business. What headaches have you found in it?
Man, such a good question because I certainly don't want to paint the picture that it's like only unicorns and rainbows and like this is the easiest thing in the world because like any business, you're going to have your challenges and headaches, but they're all manageable. So the biggest headache, there's 2 that come to mind. I bought in a rough market, my very first facility, like I mentioned earlier. And at times we had security issues, break-ins, things of that nature. And even though tenants have something called TPP, tenant protection, and their contents are essentially secured for up to $2,000, the biggest issue aside from the tenants, the inconvenience of the tenants is, these people break doors and hasps to access the unit. And that costs us money. Now we got to go fix that stuff. Right. So now compare that to my second facility in Amelia Islands. I've owned that with a partner for going on 2 years in October. We've never had a break-in. but that's a really good market, right? So these headaches can be mitigated based on not violating the first rule of real estate: location, location, location. But to answer your question directly, security issues and break-ins was a headache. And sometimes our gate, like the operator, will stop working. And remember, everything is automated. So when a customer puts in their code, if the gate's not working, now they call the management company. The management company has to send out a gate operator to fix it. Like, at times that can be a headache, but outside of that, not a whole lot of headaches. I mean, storage is a pretty slow and simple business. There's not very many emergencies in storage.
Yeah.
So is your due diligence period usually a little bit longer than you would have
Yeah,
on like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
What does that usually look like?
We typically bake in at least 45 days, but I always target 60. Yeah. So here's the thing with storage, guys, is that it's not a real estate play. You're buying a business. It just has the benefits of real estate. So during due diligence, I have a very detailed checklist that I share with clients that you want to make sure like everything you think is a deal about this is a deal, and you're confirming a bunch of different things, right? The rent rolls, the tax returns, the like everything. Like you're literally doing a full on-site audit of the facility. But yeah, storage is a business. It has the benefits of real estate.
Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense. You're almost getting a double, double whammy essentially, and getting the benefit of both. Because I know a lot of people or a couple people rather, that have done this and that have been successful, that were in real estate and transitioned into buying businesses, because they got that process down of running and growing and hiring and getting the right people in place to then just build those multiples, right? And it's similar with this as well on the commercial side. I'm curious so I would imagine, and I could be wrong, but I know for me, this is one of my questions, like there's a big jump in price range from $150,000 single family home that you could cash flow $200 on to a $1.5 million storage facility. So for somebody listening, or somebody that doesn't have, $1 million to buy one, right?
Yeah.
What does it look like when you're going through the financing portion of this? Is it, how do those commercial loans work? Like, are you putting a certain amount down? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question, because this is the biggest, I would say this is the biggest mental hurdle that I'm trying to not convince, but just educate people out there that if you find a deal, the money will follow. And I realize I'm going to drill down and get more specific, right? Because to some people listening, like, it's hard to wrap your head around that. But like, you don't have to have $1 million or $1.5 million to go buy a storage facility, right? If you find the right opportunity, the great thing about storage, particularly if you find the right deal, is that the pie is big enough where you can carve out equity and cash flow in a deal by adding a certain amount of value, right? Like maybe you're a really good connector. Maybe you're good at raising capital. Maybe you're a good deal finder. If you find a deal, that's worth a certain percentage of that deal, where you don't have to have any money. In fact, I own 3 facilities, and to this day, I have yet to put $1 of my own money into a deal. Okay. So I structured my first deal with SBA financing. So I went through the SBA process. We got financing for 85% of the purchase price. And I needed about 350 grand to get into the deal, which I didn't have. I brought in an equity partner. I gave him a piece of the deal, and he injected about 350 grand into the deal. So I closed that first with none of my own money. Seller financing. Love, love, love seller financing. My second deal, I bought for 2.1, and we got 90% seller financing. So I had to put 10% down, which I got from a private lender and paid 10%. Second deal, no money out of my pocket. The third one, I got all private money to buy that deal. So now, to answer your question about what does bank financing look like, typically in this market, you're looking at putting 25 to 30% down. If you go like the typical bank financing route, I wouldn't be going to the Chases and the Wells Fargos of the world. You want to find a small local bank or savings and loan credit union in that market with a facility. You're probably going to get better terms that way. But yeah, generally speaking, you're looking at 25 to 30% down if you're going to go the traditional bank financing route.
Got it. That makes sense. But to your point as well, with it being a business, you can also go the SBA route where you 100%. Could put 10 to 15% down depending on. Got it.
Exactly. Now the downside to that is that like you're gonna jump through a million hoops. That's a whole separate podcast. The SBA. So it was a process to get that, but we got it, and I learned a lot through that. So yeah,
got it. Okay, because that was something that I've always been interested in self-storage, right? And that is the number one thing that's always held me back. It was like I don't know how the financing works, and also I was just like I'm busy doing other things too, you know.
Yeah, I get it.
Very interesting.
Well, man, Justin, one last point I'll make on that is like you and Vince have a unique skill set when it comes to like you understand direct response marketing. Like you guys are really good marketers. You understand direct mail. Like, dude, you guys could literally like leverage your marketing skills, go find deals, collect a little bit of information on the front end from the seller, and hand it off to somebody like me or another storage owner operator and carve out a piece of these deals, right? Like, so I want people thinking about what are the assets and resources that they possess, intangible and tangible, and say, hey, how can I get involved in this without having to go necessarily start a storage business per se? Right?
Good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I can find deals all day long. That's what we do.
Dude,
100%.
Justin, I already have like ideas of designing a mail campaign.
Yeah.
I bet. Which, by the way, as an aside, and I mean this, like I want to connect offline with you guys because when I connected with Ryan last week in Oregon, I was thinking like, man, why haven't I reached out to Ballpoint? Now, granted, you guys might look for like customers that are sending out thousands and thousands in storage. It's pretty hyper targeted, so I'm not sure if I'm your ideal customer avatar.
We have people do that all the time.
Okay, sweet.
But yeah, to your point, also not opposed to partnering or talking about things. So we
cool.
Open to things. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Cool, man. Yeah, this has been awesome. I'm glad we had you come on for this. For just kind of like final thoughts on this for somebody that's, and we might have already covered it, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. Like someone that's wanting to just get started, what's the first thing you would have somebody do? Someone who's listening and is like, man, I think I want to pivot. What's the first thing that you'd recommend?
First thing I would have you do is just decide that you want to do this, and then pick one or two markets where, based on the criteria that I outlined earlier. And I would start with, like, I live in Miami, so I've never spent a minute looking for storage in Miami. But you might live in a place that has a small population, or it has the criteria I talked about. Just jump on Google Maps and type in your city, state. Click on that nearby button, put in self-storage, and you can easily start getting in front of these people and just having conversations. And like, so what does that look like? And I'll run through this really quick. Aside from building rapport and just using your people skills, obviously, if you can get the unit mix, which in other words is how many 5x5s, how many 5x10s, get the unit mix, find out exactly what the rent is. If I just had those two pieces of information, I could essentially evaluate any storage deal and get a pretty good idea of what it's worth. But I would say get clear on your goals, pick a market, right? And then start having conversations with owners. That obviously there's a lot more to it that we don't have the benefit of time to get into. But that's step 1, 2, and 3. I would also encourage people what I just talked about, like, create a list of the assets and resources that you have available. Maybe you're a good marketer. You could generate leads and bring them to someone like me and carve out a piece of the deal. Just have a joint venture agreement in place with somebody. Or maybe you're a good connector. You know how to raise capital. There's a lot of different ways people can get involved in storage.
Yeah. I have one last question. Do you go boots on ground and visit these facilities?
Only when I'm under contract.
Okay.
I never, ever, ever advise somebody travel to a facility that they don't have under contract, unless it just happens to be in their backyard. Right. But no, I only go. So I own 3 facilities. I've been to 2 of them twice and 1 of them 3 times.
Okay.
When I'm under due diligence, when I actually close on it, and then maybe once a year we go, but we got good boots on the ground. We got good eyes in the facility. So it's not, that's another thing I like, is I don't have to go traveling there every month or every quarter or anything like that.
Right. You don't have to do site visits every month.
We have our third-party management company does site visits every quarter, but yeah, I don't have to be there.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you for coming on. This was good. I'm really looking forward to chatting more with you.
Cool,
so yeah, thanks again for showing up and providing an awesome amount of value and just giving us all the answers that we ask questions to. So really, really appreciate it, man. It was great meeting you. And thanks again for showing up, everybody. And we'll see you next week.
Awesome.
See ya.